families, but more so if it's a child headed home when caring for themselves is too much to keep up with. Just ask 15-year-old Tapelo Letoko, who has been living alone since 2015 after his brother's arrest. Tapelo lives alone in a shack in Porky, south of Johannesburg. A group of at least 10 volunteers took their time to help the grade 9 pupil with some household chores. First, peeling out the curtain hanging on Tapelo's sounding wall. The smell of dust trapped on the permeable wall fills Tapelo's corrugated room. Rats are also posing a huge health risk. Our reporter Maakgegetla will unpack more about the story in our later bulletins. Well, for more on this story, we're joined now by our social worker Tasneem Bhula from the Johannesburg Institute for Social Services. Good afternoon, Tasneem, and thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk. Tasneem, this is a heartbreaking story, more so because this, we know, is not an isolated case in the country. Just how prevalent are these cases in our informal settlements right now? I know it's difficult to quantify, but just give us a sense of the scale and magnitude of the problem at this juncture.
Okay, at the present moment, we as social workers, especially at the Johannesburg Institute of Social Services, we work a lot in the informal settlements, and from what we've experienced, I won't say majority of the households are child-headed households, but there is, let's say, about 5 out of 10 households that are headed by children. And you know, it's really disturbing for us, because when we think of a normal family, we think there's a mother, there's a father, and there's children. But in today's society, it's not happening that way.
I want you to help us understand the circumstances leading to the formation of child-headed households, because for a long time we thought it's HIV orphaning, but there's a lot of other socioeconomic factors that come into play here, and give us a sense of the daily lived realities these children experience.
Okay, obviously there's other factors, like you're saying, it's not only the HIV orphan kids that are left to head the household. From what we've experienced, substance abuse is one of the top, where the parents are basically disappearing because they want to get the drugs, they want to do this. So eventually they leave the kids alone at home to see to themselves, or especially the younger parents, they a lot of the times they feel that partying is the way to go, and they forget about the kids at home. And for us, that's a major issue, and we really do try to create parenting skills workshops to empower these parents and to show them that this is not the way. At the end of the day, the kids need the parents to be there. We can't expect a 3-year-old to be at home cooking for themselves.
Tasneem, I recently read the child abuse tracking study done by the University of Cape Town's Children's Institute. And it comes across very clearly in that report that social workers and police officers are failing to collaborate cohesively and effectively, and a lot of these abused and neglected children, once they find themselves, if they're lucky enough to find themselves into the child protection system, we are failing them, and these cases were tracked over a 5-year period. Why are social workers and police not working more closely together and more effectively? What can you tell me from your experience on the ground?
Okay, from my experience, yes, there's a lack of communication between social workers and the SABs, basically. So what happens most of the time, because SABs do have victim empowerment centers at their stations, and most of the times the cases get reported at the victim empowerment stations, and majority of the time it doesn't go to the proper social workers to deal with it. And also from what I've experienced on the ground, SABs, when we do go there, most of the time there's a lot of, when we ask for assistance, there's that hesitance, like to say, okay, we'll assist you now, but there's more important cases. Nice. So basically social workers spend hours in police stations waiting for assistance.
All right, now programs like early childhood development, critical here. Now a government has a huge budget that they've pledged towards this. Are you seeing it rolling out in our more vulnerable communities at the speed we would like to see it?
Absolutely not. At the moment, from the communities we work in, it's individual community members who are actually rolling out these programs themselves, who are getting funding themselves in order to assist other community members. Ordinary people are opening for example, preschools using a shack. And in that shack they use paraffin to make fires to keep the kids home. So it's ordinary community members instead of where we have the NGOs that are supposed to step in, where government is supposed to step in. So there is a lack in our most vulnerable communities.
Tasneem, in this story SABC News covered, Tapelo was lucky enough to have a community that galvanized support around him to help with meeting his personal needs and so on. But not all our children are lucky enough, are they?
Yes, definitely not. In some communities, people are also afraid, I would say, to assist, because what if they assist this child and, for example, the parents come back and they get upset and they start attacking the communities. And also in many communities they feel, why should they help if the government and NGOs are there to assist? Why should they step in to assist the child-headed households, basically?
Very quickly, while I have you here, I just want to garner your thoughts on this. How do abused and neglected children in our country, if they are lucky enough to enter the child protection system, experience that system? What's it like for them?
From what we've experienced as social workers, and I work hand in hand with my kids in my caseload, a lot of them are not happy of, for example, what's happening to them in the homes. There's abuse happening in the homes. The social workers placed in the homes, we've received numerous complaints. I'm a statutory social worker, so I deal with the caseload and not the actual counseling in the homes and stuff like that. So the kids, most of them, the lucky ones have the good experience, and those that are unfortunate, unfortunately, I mean, our government homes, we've been receiving a lot of complaints coming in, some where they're not getting food. So it's a major crisis that we're experiencing at the moment. So mostly it's not a pleasant experience, and obviously taking kids away from the parents, it's not a pleasant experience for the kids as for themselves, basically.
All right, how do we help you? What do you need to see happen from government side to alleviate the situation of the country's most vulnerable?
I think basically more funding, more projects at the faster speed. If they have the budget, they should roll it out fast, because we are in dire need of these services in our communities. Because us as the NGOs, we can only do so much. I mean, one individual can only do so much, but it takes a lot of people to make a difference. Understand? So from government side, we need that more funding at a faster rate, basically.
Tasneem Bhula, thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk and sharing those very invaluable insights with us. Tasneem is a social worker at the Johannesburg Institute for Social Services, joining us on the desk this afternoon. Peter has more for you in a moment.